The galaxy had long known the name of the Karen. They were raiders, slavers, and breakers of worlds. From the edge of the Orion Spur to the distant colonies of the Velari, their fleets moved like shadows, consuming civilizations with ruthless efficiency. They stripped planets of resources, stole children from their cradles, and left behind only ashes. When they turned their gaze upon Earth, it was not with caution but with amusement. Humans, to them, were a young species, fractured, argumentative, too busy fighting amongst themselves to stand against an interstellar power. Earth was supposed to be just another tally mark on the Karen's ledger of conquest. And so, the day came when the sky split open. Vast, bone-colored ships descended from orbit, blotting out the sun. Their spires bristled with weapons forged to terrify, to cow, to make entire nations kneel before a single strike was fired. The Karen had enslaved 1,000 races before. They saw no reason this would be different. But they were wrong. First strike in the city of Karachi, the Karen dropped from the sky with chains in their claws. They landed in the plazas, roaring orders in a dozen alien tongues, their translators spitting out harsh demands: kneel, submit, serve, or die. And for a moment, there was silence. Humanity held its breath. Then a single stone flew. It struck a Karen slaver across the snout. The alien snarled in rage, leveling its weapon at the crowd. But before it could fire, the mob surged. It wasn't soldiers, it wasn't armies, it was civilians, men and women with nothing but bricks, kitchen knives, iron rods. They moved with a fury born of centuries of surviving conquerors and tyrants. The Karen fired, their plasma bolts ripping holes through the streets. People fell, but others kept charging. The invaders had expected submission. They found defiance, the spread of defiance. The resistance spread like wildfire. In Manila, captured humans used their chains as garrots, dragging their masters into the shadows. In Sao Paulo, entire favelas became fortresses, every alley a death trap, for alien patrols. In Warsaw, a priest held a rusted hunting rifle above his congregation and declared, "Better to die free than live in chains." Even in the ruins of New York, where Karen gunships reduced skyscrapers to rubble, survivors fought back with guerrilla tactics: snipers in broken towers, ambushes in subways, homemade bombs tearing through armored patrols. The Karen began to realize something no other species had taught them. Humanity did not break. It bled. It raged. It endured. The turning point. When the Karen tried to round up children in Lagos, something happened they had never seen before. The Nigerian army, thought destroyed, emerged from the shadows. Not in open war, but in scattered bands. Each one striking supply convoys, sabotaging fuel lines, poisoning stolen water reserves. They didn't fight to win battles. They fought to make the invaders suffer. In Moscow, captured Karen war beasts were turned loose by human saboteurs. The beasts, confused and enraged, turned on their masters, tearing through alien ranks before being gunned down. And in Washington, what remained of human militaries, fragmented, desperate, launched their first coordinated counterattack. Fighter. Jets, thought obsolete against alien craft, screamed into the skies, armed with nothing but steel and fire. Many fell, but some got through. And when a single alien dreadnought exploded in orbit, humanity roared with one voice. The myth of Karen invincibility had shattered. The breaking of pride. The Karen Council of Captains could not understand. Yet every other world had yielded. The Velari had sung their surrender hymns. The Katok had dropped their weapons at the first sight of orbital fire. But these humans, these hairless bipeds from a single blue world, they fought with no hope of victory. They fought as though slavery was worse than death. The Karen sent more ships, more troops, more firepower. But the harder they pushed, the more vicious humanity became. Every burned village spawned 10 new fighters. Every massacre hardened the survivors. Every attempt at terror only fanned the flames of resistance. The Karen learned the human word for this kind of war: guerrilla. It was not the war of armies. It was the war of shadows, of whispers, of endless bleeding wounds that no empire could sustain. The retreat months into the invasion, the Karen, fleets hung in low orbit above Earth. Their holds were not filled with slaves, as they had planned. Instead, they were filled with the wounded, the broken, and the dead. Pride had driven them here. Pride had promised an easy victory. Pride had been shattered by a species that refused to kneel. The Karen did not leave in triumph. They left. In silence, their fleets limping away like beaten dogs. The galaxy would not hear of human slaves. Instead, it would hear of human defiance. Epilogue: on a hill outside Warsaw, survivors raised a flag made from scraps of cloth. It bore no nation's symbol. It bore no colors of division. It was simply white, slashed through with red. The mark of survival, of sacrifice, of unity in blood. The message was clear, carried across every resistance camp, every ruined city, every whisper of survivors hiding in the dark. We are not prey. We are not slaves. We are human. And across the stars, the Karen would forever remember the world where their pride was broken. The Zorath Empire was built on chains. For centuries they had plundered the stars, dragging species from their homeworlds into bondage. They thrived not on conquest alone, but on commerce, the endless trade of living bodies. To the Zorath, every new species was a resource, a commodity, a tool to be broken and sold. When scouts first reported Earth, the Zorath laughed. A young species, untested among the stars, billions of bodies. A planet rich with labor stock. Humanity was not seen as a civilization, but as a harvest. And so the fleets came, silver arcs of iron stretching across the skies, blotting out the stars. The fallout happened swiftly. Cities trembled under orbital bombardments. Towers crumbled, militaries were crushed, and civilians were rounded up in great herds. The Zorath did not destroy Earth. They farmed it. Shuttles descended like locusts, dragging men, women, and children aboard. Shackles clicked closed, collars hummed with suppressors, and humanity's cries echoed in steel halls. To the galaxy, it was just another conquest. To the Zorath, it was a celebration. But to the humans, it was only the beginning. The slave pens. The slave pens were vast and stinking. Metal walls, no windows, only the dull glow of lamps above. Humanity was thrown into these cages, stripped of freedom, stripped of names, branded as property. The Zorath expected silence, despair, and submission. That was how every other race had behaved after the first whips fell. But in the pens, the humans whispered. They shared stories of lost cities, of families torn apart, of resistance that still lingered on Earth. They spoke in hushed tones about freedom, about dignity, about never bowing. The Zorath didn't hear the whispers. They only saw bodies, and that was their first mistake. The spark of rebellion, it began in the holds of a transport ship bound for the auction worlds. A man named David, once a construction worker in London, noticed the alien guards' routine. The way they grew lazy after feeding, the way their weapons rested on their laps. He whispered his observations to the others. Maria, a teacher from Mexico City, remembered old lessons of resistance from history, slaves who had risen before, revolutions that had overturned empires. She spoke of them at night when the guards were too drunk to listen. And Hassan, a mechanic from Cairo, studied the locks, the shackles, the circuits of the alien cages. His fingers itched with knowledge. He told the others, "Nothing made can't be broken." In the silence of chains, Rebellion was born. The first blow. The breakout was brutal. Hassan shorted the energy locks with a shard of metal torn from the floor plating. Sparks flew, and for the first time the pens yawned open. David moved first, tackling a guard with bare hands, wrestling for its weapon. He didn't win cleanly. He came away bleeding, ribs broken, but the guard was dead. The sea humans surged. Maria led them through the chaos, her voice steady even as blaster fire cut men and women down. "Forward! Freedom is ahead!" she shouted. When the Zorath finally regained control, half the pens were empty. The humans had vanished into the belly of the ship, hiding in ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and storage bays. The Zorath thought they would starve. Instead, they hunted. One by one, guards vanished into the dark. Whispers. The story of that rebellion spread like wildfire across the empire. Humans, scattered in markets and mines, heard whispers from traders and guards alike. They killed their masters. They burned their cages. They do not bow. And wherever humans heard those words, their eyes lit with fire. In the mines of Soreth Prime, humans sabotaged the drills, collapsing tunnels on their overseers. In the gladiator pits of Vaynar, they turned their chains into weapons and fought, not for entertainment, but for slaughter. In the breeding camps of Lorth, women poisoned their guards with stolen chemicals, leaving the barracks empty and silent by morning. The Zorath had expected livestock. What they found were wolves in chains. The Empire trembles at first. The Zorath responded with cruelty. They executed entire groups, burned prisoners alive, wiped out colonies suspected of harboring resistance. But each act of terror only hardened human resolve. For every village destroyed, a dozen uprisings followed. For every massacre, the humans' hatred grew sharper, colder, more united. The galaxy watched in awe. The Valari, long enslaved, wept at the news. The Katok, broken for centuries, whispered prayers to the humans they had never met. Across 100 worlds, slaves began to rise, not in great armies, but in small defiant sparks, inspired by the species that refused to kneel. The Zorath's greatest weapon had always been fear, but humans were not afraid. The shattering breaking point came at the auction of Ulthar, the Empire's grandest display of conquest. The Zorath gathered nobles, merchants, and warlords to bid on fresh stock, thousands of humans in chains lined up for sale. The auction began with laughter. It ended in fire. Hassan had smuggled a fragment of stolen tech into his shackles. Maria had organized every prisoner to wait for her signal. David, scarred but alive, stood at the front of the line, silent, waiting. And when the overseer raised the hammer to begin the bidding, the chains fell. The pens burst open. Humans surged forth, armed with stolen blades, whips, and fury. The market descended into chaos as fire consumed the stands. Alien nobles scrambled for their lives. The great auction of Ulthar collapsed in screams, smoke, and the sound of human war cries echoing through the halls. The Zorath, humiliated before the galaxy, fled. The humans were not yet free. Many still languished in pens across distant worlds. Earth was scarred, its skies still watched by alien fleets, but the myth of the Zorath's unbreakable dominion had shattered. Never before had a species resisted in chains. Never before had a people turned their captivity into a revolution. Humanity's defiance became a story carried in whispers, in songs, in flames, and the Zorath, for all their fleets and power, fled with broken pride, because they had come for slaves and found warriors instead. The Terek were hunters by birth and conquerors by choice. Their fleets had torn across the spiral arms of the galaxy, leaving behind only the echo of their laughter and the rattle of chains. To them, Conquest was not duty, it was sport. Every new species was a quarry to be run down, shackled, and sold. And when they discovered Earth, they thought they had found the easiest prey of all, billions of bodies, scattered nations, and no presence among the stars. The humans, they believed, would be harvested like cattle. So the hunters came. The arrival of predators. Their ships filled the skies, monstrous silhouettes blotting out constellations. In every city they landed, the Turek bellowed their command. Bow, serve, submit, and you may live. The first battles were brutal. Alien weapons tore through tanks and aircraft. Armies were scattered in days. Governments collapsed under orbital fire. Cities burned, and smoke coiled into the heavens. The Turek expected despair. They expected the humans to kneel as every other race had, but humanity did not kneel. The cunning of prey at first, resistance was scattered. Riots in Paris, ambushes in Mumbai, snipers in the ruins of Detroit. The Turek laughed at such defiance, calling it thrashing before slaughter. But the humans learned. They studied the hunters as prey studies predators. They discovered weaknesses, the rhythm of patrols, the blind spots of alien armor, the fragility of their supply lines. And with every lesson, resistance sharpened. In the forests of the Amazon, tribes struck from the shadows, vanishing like ghosts. In the mountains of Afghanistan, fighters used ancient guerrilla tactics that had bled invaders for centuries. In the ice of Siberia, railguns hidden in the tundra ripped holes through alien dropships. What the Turek had not understood was this. Humans had always been prey. Prey that learned, prey that adapted, prey that survived. And now the prey had turned into hunters. The first kill. The turning point came above the Atlantic Ocean. The Turek flagship Razorclaw descended low, broadcasting its victory across the globe. But a small fleet of human submarines had tracked it for days, studying its movements, waiting for a moment of weakness. When the Razorclaw dipped into the kill zone, torpedoes screamed upward from the depths. The first volley crippled its engines. The second tore through its fuel cells. The third, rigged with nuclear warheads, erupted in a fireball that lit the ocean like a second sun. For the first time in living memory, a Turek warship had fallen to prey. The galaxy would never forget that explosion. The hunters panicked. The death of the Razorclaw sent shockwaves through the Turek ranks. No species had ever killed a flagship before. No species had ever dared. And yet these humans had not only dared, they had succeeded. Worse, the resistance spread. Every human victory, no matter how small, inspired 100 more. Entire cities became traps. Bridges collapsed beneath armored columns. Power grids were turned into weapons, electrocuting troops en masse. The Turek's laughter faded. The hunters began to feel fear. The trap in Africa. The humans set their masterpiece. They leaked false intelligence, letting the Turek believe that the last remnants of Earth's armies were gathering in the Serengeti. The hunters came in force, thousands of troops, dozens of war beasts, half a fleet in orbit, but the plains were empty. The ground was wired with explosives. The skies were filled with stolen alien drones, turned against their masters. The Turek forces walked straight into a storm of fire. Explosions ripped across the plains, tearing their beasts apart. Guerrilla fighters struck from cover, disappearing before the hunters could respond. Orbital cannons, hacked by human engineers, turned on their own fleet, lancing holes through Turek ships. It was not a battle. It was slaughter. For the first time, the hunters realized what it meant to be hunted. The retreat weeks later, the Turek fleet limped in orbit, scarred and broken. Their holds were not filled with slaves, but with the wounded and dying. Their war beasts lay rotting in the plains below. Their commanders whispered of Earth as a cursed world. The order was given: retreat. The Turek had come with laughter and pride. They left in silence, their ships vanishing into the void. Behind them, humanity stood bloodied, battered, but unbroken. Epilogue. In the ruins of London, survivors painted a message across the shattered walls of Westminster. The hunters came! They fled! That message spread across the stars, carried by smugglers, whispered in slave markets, repeated in dark corners of conquered worlds. The galaxy had always known humanity as prey, but now they knew the truth. Humans were never prey. They were predators in waiting. And the Terek would never forget the world where their pride was broken, where their laughter died, and where the hunted became the hunters.